There's a quote attributed most commonly to the Roman author Seneca. It goes something like this: "Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful." Now, I'm saying that at the outset because I want you to bear that in mind as we proceed, because we're going to come back to that in due time. But recently, I was watching a video in a series where two individuals, typically a man and woman, are placed in a house for a weekend. And effectively, it's a show about whether or not the women and men involved will come together and try to figure something out, or if it's just a flop at the outset. Now, I don't normally watch these things. It's in a foreign language, and I watch it to improve my foreign language skills. But what I found quite interesting about one of the episodes I saw recently was a case of a woman who was significantly below the SMV of the man in question. She was grossly overweight and in general unattractive. And the man simply told her that she's not exactly the type that he's into. And the comment section was fascinating. The comment section was full of pity and full of the type of commentary you might expect when you know somebody, for example, is not very attractive, whereupon you start talking about their good qualities of character, their personality, how kind they are. And of course, the audience cannot extract any of these things from the brief episode of a YouTube video, right? They can't. But as if it were an automatic reflex upon her rejection, they all just launched into it. And this is something I've been thinking about for many, many years. The nature of virtue signaling, ever since it became a big thing. Now, virtue signaling has always been around. It's part of human nature. But, of course, the internet amplifies it. The internet makes it that much worse, or that much better, depending on your perspective. And so, when you have a video of a fat and ugly woman who's rejected, the automatic response, it seems, almost as if it were a reflex, is to offer commentary about how nice a person she is and how she deserves a real chance at love and the usual things you might expect. And something I've been asking myself for years, as I said, has been this question of whether or not it's authentic. Not that the commentary itself is not authentic, but the place where it's emanating from. Do people who engage in virtue signaling actually believe in that engagement? Are they convinced that the activity they are pursuing is worthwhile and good? Do they believe it's the right thing to do? Or are they simply appealing to their own egos? Are they showing off in the most common interpretation of virtue signaling so that other people will acknowledge their good deeds? Even though writing a comment under a YouTube video is hardly a great achievement, it's easily done. That's part of the essence of virtue signaling in the postmodern world, right? Current year, you just leave a comment and you're virtuous. You're a good person. But to triangulate back to my original statement that Seneca made 2,000 years ago, give or take, that is, religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful, you see these divisions throughout modern society. Religious belief is not unique to proper religion. We all grow up with certain mythologies and fairy tales, if you will. And they're in place for a reason, which is to say, inasmuch as the common people believe religion to be true, the common people believe these sorts of fairy tales we tell ourselves to be true. They believe, I think sincerely, many times, in the ultimate alleged truth of, say, human character in this case, that a person might be fat and hideous on the outside, but have some redeeming qualities internally, even though simultaneously maintaining the contradiction within themselves that they themselves, for example, would never date said person. When I was perusing through the comment section of this video, it occurred to me that very few of the men would date the woman in question, despite the pity-inducing comments. And the women, well, assuming they're not lesbians, I doubt they would consider her either. And so it's an internal contradiction. On the one hand, you have the visceral, instinctual attraction or lack thereof, the feeling of being drawn to something or not, versus years of what can only be called verbal and mental brainwashing. Again and again and again. Fairy tales of the sort such as, it's your character that counts. Your personality is more important than your appearance. Things like this. There are religious connotations to this. Just as sincerely religious people harbor internal contradictions within their own minds with respect to the religious creeds they adhere to and the way they act out their own lives. It's the same principle here. And so effectively, virtue signaling is, in air quotes, virtuous. It gives people a sense of being important, of doing the right thing. At the same time, it permits people to exist in states of contradiction. Of course, the wise, people who see through this charade, know that it's BS. They know that, for example, the young woman in question is fat and ugly. And they're probably not going to offer comments of pity highlighting how great her personality is, because people like that know it's BS. But what about the rulers? Now, whoever the rulers might be, the people who lead society, the people who cook up these fairy tales, it's obviously very useful. Because the common folk who profit from that sense of feeling virtuous and good about themselves, all the while harboring these internal contradictions, they get the best of all worlds. They might not realize the truth, perhaps only the wise do, but the rulers receive the benefit of mass adherence to a sort of ideology that helps calm society down, doesn't it? And that's really the point of this. Many people throughout the ages have argued for the utility of religion. And I would be somebody who might very well agree with them. Because imagine the worst case scenario of storytelling within a societal context. Imagine if, instead of hearing religious fairy tales, instead of hearing fairy tales about how character is the most important trait you have, about human qualities, instead, what you would hear would be the prognostications of an astrophysicist about the end of the universe and the ultimate futility of all human action. The idea that no matter what you do, humanity will ultimately fail. And you as an individual, well, you'll fail long before humanity itself fails. Imagine if that were the church rhetoric. Imagine if every human being received that rhetoric, which, based on the science, as far as I'm aware, is accurate. I think many people would be profoundly affected by it. I think many people would slink away in a state of absolute decrepitude and never want to do anything at all. And so these fairy tales that we tell ourselves have value. You see, I used to ask myself, do these people really believe it? I used to not acknowledge the possibility of internal contradiction. But after many years of thought, conversation, and reflection, I've realized that internal contradiction is not the exception when it comes to human mental states, but rather the norm. And this particular issue is no exception to that. A person can wholly believe, I say believe, not act it out, but believe that personality and character are more important than appearance. Simultaneously, in the same breath as this individual expresses his thought, he or she can reject somebody else because internally, instinctually, the individual they've rejected is unattractive or fat or ugly or all of the above. And so that is entirely possible. And it works in synchronicity, actually. The only people who don't really benefit from this synchronicity are the wise, the people who see through it, so to speak. There's no benefit. If we acknowledge that it's false, transparent, and not true, then you become an outsider looking in. You see all these people engaging in this game, and you're led to think about it and wonder, why are they doing it in the first place? It becomes, as it were, a psychological, sociological experiment. But there's no direct benefit to the wise. The wise have simply, in this case, pierced the veil of ignorance. But the feedback loop between the common folk and the rulers, whoever these rulers might be, is synchronous and very useful. The rulers need for the religion to be functional and to feed the appetites of the recipients of the religion. And the recipients of the religion need the religion to be functional and to feed their appetites and to allow for these types of inherent contradictions to exist within themselves. That ultimately is the virtue of virtue signaling. It's not one or the other, as I have spent many years thinking about. It is the melding of internal contradictions. Now, of course, there are going to be some individuals that know that it's an internal contradiction. These are the people, oftentimes, apostates, who leave the religion. But most people don't. They are perfectly willing and capable of cleaving to said religion or set of beliefs, with all the contradictions that might entail, with no problem. And the benefit redounds to everybody who participates. Only the wise, seemingly, do not benefit. And, of course, possibly, the people, such as this fat, unattractive woman I mentioned, who, assuming she has a modicum of intelligence, realizes that the game is rigged too, that people are saying these things, leaving comments, not because they actually think she has a good character or she's a good person, but rather because they're engaging in the typical charade of virtue signaling. It makes them feel good, and the other people engaging in the same behavior feel good about it too, hence the feedback loop. But alternatively, since most of the common folk believe in the religion, she too probably believes in it. It would be a rare person who doesn't. Remember many, many moons ago, a video by the late, great F.A. Monday, who used to make videos on YouTube, where he read out forum commentary of people that used to be very fat, who lost weight, and their entire world changed. In the blink of an eye, people were receiving attention that hitherto they had never received. And the state of shock they were in was very much strong evidence, indeed, an indication that they sincerely believed the poppycock that they had been fed in our religion of modernity, which is to say they thought that their problem was their personality was at fault, or they were not sufficiently humorous, or they needed to work on their character. And yet in reality, all they needed to do was lose 40 pounds, and magically their character, personality, and every other attendant feature improved in the eyes of the many. And that state of shock is an indication that most people actually believe that stuff. They truly believe it until they receive such a massive slap in the face in the form of counter-evidence, such as losing a massive amount of weight, whereupon the entire world changes. Likewise, the ones who had gained weight, how suddenly they were more poorly treated. That's the kind of thing that can turn the switch off, but it's rare. And it suggests that most people, the common folk, wherever they might fit into the scheme of fat, attractive, whatever it might be, they believe these things. They are good, noble lies. Ultimately, that's what we're talking about, the good and noble lie. And it seems to work. Because the alternative, if you think about it, the most extreme scenario I painted, where humans are fed the absolute truth about the miserable state of their existence in the universe, no, that wouldn't work. But I also think approximations of that wouldn't work. Virtue signaling by way of the internet is simply an extension of very, very old needs and wants humans have always had. It just has expanded exponentially due to the nature of the technology. The technology enables traits humans have, or amplifies them, but it doesn't create them. And this is why the wise will always be outsiders. They do not receive any benefit from the synchronicity of our current day religion. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. As always, please leave a like. Hit the subscribe button if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell icon to be informed of forthcoming videos, because YouTube does throttle my views by not informing my subs. Share the video. And as always, if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. May the gods watch over you. May fortune favor you. You take care. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.